everyone. Welcome to our health education lesson. This lesson will cover Module 1 and 2 in health this fourth quarter. In the previous lesson, we talked about first aid and unintentional injuries. This time, the main focus of this lesson is the intentional injuries. Let us now begin the lesson. The basic necessities of mankind include food, clothing, and shelter. However, it is not enough that we have these basic needs if we are living in a fear and the uncertainty of danger every day. Today, one rising necessity that we need to focus on is safety. We are always exposed to dangers, whether we are young or old, rich or poor. It is therefore necessary that we are aware of what these possible dangers are, how all of this can affect us, and how we can prepare ourselves to prevent them from happening or minimize their effects if they happen to us. Let's begin with intentional injuries. As we define, intentional injuries are injuries resulting from violence. There are two classifications of intentional injuries. The first one is the self-inflicted. When we say self-inflicted, when a person harms him or herself on purpose. And the second one is assault, when the person or persons harm another on purpose. These are the two classifications of intentional injuries. Let's start with the suicide and parasuicide are intentional injuries that are self-inflicted, while assault has four classifications. The first one, those that were committed within the family. Number 2, those that were committed by peers. Number 3, those that were committed by other groups. And the last one is those that were committed by the family, peers, or other group. Suicide and parasuicide. Suicide is the intentional taking of one's own life. Many of those are attempt suicide do not receive mental and emotional counseling because their families tries to hide the problem because they are ashamed of it. Because of this, the problem is not solved and the attempt to commit suicide happens again. Studies also indicate that other family members are also at risk of committing suicide. On the other hand, a suicide attempt in which a person does not intend to die is called parasuicide. It is often a cry for help, meaning the person wants others to know what he or she is feeling. Despite this, parasuicide should be taken seriously because it may also lead to death. How will you recognize a person who has suicidal tendencies? Oftentimes, the person gives clues through his or her behavior and speech. Some of these clues may be talking about suicide or death, writing farewell letters, or giving away valuable things to their friends and siblings, showing changes in behavior, moods, and feelings. The second one is domestic violence. Domestic violence is an act that includes physical assault, like hitting, pushing, shoving, and etc. Sexual abuse or unwanted or forced sexual activity, and verbal abuse. These are behaviors that are used by one person in a relationship who tries to control the other. This may occur to partners who may be married or not married. They may be heterosexual or homosexual, like gay or lesbian, couples, and may be living together, separated, or dating. Domestic violence includes abuse and actions such as name-calling or put-downs, keeping a partner from contacting his or her family or friends, withholding money or allowance or denying financial support, stopping a partner from getting or keeping a job, actual or threatened physical harm, sexual assault, stalking, and who are the possible victims of domestic violence? Anyone can be a victim or it as risk of it, especially if his or her partner. is very jealous or she spies or him or her, will not let him her break off the relationship, hurts him or her in any way, is violent or brags about hurting other people, puts him or her down or makes him or her feel bad, forces him or her to have sex or make him or her afraid to say no to sex, abuses drugs or alcohol, pressures him or her to use drugs or alcohol, has a history of bad relationships and blames it on others. There are some children who experience domestic assault or domestic violence in their homes. Their parents may think that their children do not know about the violence, but most of the time, the children are aware of it. They all feel helpless, scared, and upset. Some of them blame themselves as they feel like the violence is their fault. Nevertheless, children in a violent home experience different problems as they grow up, and those problems do not go away on their own. They can be there even as the child gets older. Number three is bullying. Bullying is an unwanted, aggressive behavior. The behavior is repeated or can be repeated over time. Both kids who are bullied and who bully others may have serious lasting problems. In order to be considered bullying, the behavior must be aggressive, include an imbalance of power, where kids who bully use their power, such as physical strength, access to embarrassing information, or popularity, to control or harm others. Repetition. Bullying behavior happen more than once or have the potential to happen more than once. There are different classification of bullying. These are verbal bullying, saying or writing mean and nasty things. It includes teasing, name-calling, making inappropriate sexual comments, taunting, and threatening to cause harm. Social bullying, sometimes referred to as relational bullying, hurting someone's reputation or relationships. It includes telling other children not to be friends with someone, spreading rumors about someone, and embarrassing someone in public. Stalking is another form of intentional injuries. Stalking is a pattern of behavior that makes you feel afraid, nervous, harassed, or in danger. It is when someone repeatedly contacts you, follows you, sends you things, and talks to you even when you don't want them to. It is very threatening to the person being stalked because the behaviors and actions of the stalker often invade his or her privacy. Stalking behaviors involve actions such as knowing your schedule, showing up at places you go to, sending mail, email and pictures, calling or texting repeatedly, contacting you or posting about you on social networking sites like Facebook, Twitter, etc., writing letters, damaging your property, creating a website about you, sending gifts, stealing things that belong to you, and other actions to contact, harass, track, or frighten you. You can be stalked by someone you know casually, a stranger, or a past or current friend, boyfriend or girlfriend. Getting notes and gifts at your home, in your locker, or other places might seem sweet and harmless to other people. But if you don't want their gifts, phone calls, messages, letters, or emails, it can be scary and frustrating. The next one is extortion. It's the act of using force or threats to force people to hand over their money or properties on favors. Extortion can happen outside or near schools wherein children are victimized to give up their allowances in exchange for the promise that they will not be beaten up. The act is different from robbery. In robbery, there is a very real and very immediate violence. In extortion, a person may only suffer from the fear of harm if she gives in the demands of the one who extorts. The sixth one is the gang and youth violence. A gang is defined as a relatively tough, mostly street-based group of young people who regard themselves and may be seen by others as a group that engage in a range of criminal activity and violence. Oftentimes, they are in conflict with other similar gangs. Young people join gangs and groups for lots of reasons. One of these is their need to belong, be included or be part of group they can identify themselves with. This is oftentimes true for those who do not feel sense of belonging or care at home. Another reason is their desire for adventure, as they believe that joining gangs will give them the excitement and thrill of their lives. Lastly, they feel protected and look out for if they are members of the gang. Gang members are responsible for majority of serious crimes like extortion, theft, and robbery. They are also likely to be involved in selling drugs and are more likely to bring weapons to school for fear of attack from rival gangs. A fraternity is a group of people with similar backgrounds, occupations, interests, or tastes. In campuses and universities, fraternities are represented Greek letters. The youth may think of several benefits in joining a fraternity. They may see it as a gain in power and protection, as fraternities have a reputation for being a powerful group. Others would regard fraternity members, especially their seniors, as those who will provide the neophytes and lower classmen guidance and assistance. And since most fraternities are based in colleges and universities, some would join fraternities for academic support. Most youth would also join fraternities because of the sense of belongingness that these fraternities would provide. However, it is not easy to join fraternities. To maintain their exclusiveness, fraternity members would require an applicant to undergo a series of initiation rites to become part of the brotherhood. One of these is hazing, or activities that involve harassment, abuse, or humiliation. Hazing can be dangerous to applicants, as they will be subjected to physical and psychological suffering, like being beaten with wooden paddles, and may cause them a lot of injuries. Some even die in the process, which is why hazing and other forms of initiation rites in fraternities, sororities, and organizations are now being regulated under Republic Act 8049, known as the Anti-Hazing Law. Under this law, physical hazing is prohibited. Fraternities, sororities, and other organizations are required to inform the school authorities regarding initiation rites that would take place, and the school will send representatives to the actual initiation rites to see to it that no physical hazing will be done. Aside from the dangers of physical hazing, fraternities often get involved in riots or fight with rival groups, which expose them more danger. Despite this, fraternities continue to attract applicants. Number 8 is kidnapping and abduction. Kidnapping is taking away or forcefully moving a person against his or her will and holding him/her in unjust captivity. The act is usually done for a motive like getting a monetary reward or ransom or getting some sort of benefit from the person or their family. The kidnapper is usually a family acquaintance who knows about the family's wealth and influence, or a stranger who targeted the victim based on their outward appearance or wealth, or information given to the kidnapper from someone who knows the victim intimately, such as a household employee or someone else who suspects that the victim has a lot of cash. On the other hand, abduction is the use of deceit or force in order to take a person or a child away from their home or relatives. In abduction, the victim usually knows or has some sort of relation with the abductor. Most of the time, the abductor is not holding the victim for profit or any monetary gain. Abduction usually happens to children with separated parents, wherein the child will be tricked by one parent to come with her and take the child away from the other parent who has sole custody of the child. This is usually because of an emotional disorder created when the abductor feels that the child's welfare and best interests are at risk, or that the child will be gone completely from his or her life. Sometimes, abductions occur out of revenge. People take hostages during periods of anger and deep loss, like abducting the child of an ex-lover for revenge or to blackmail the ex-lover to think again resuming their relationship. 9. The acts of terror. Or terrorism is the use of violence for political goals and putting the public on great numbers of people in fear. The purpose of these terrorist groups is to produce terror in their victims through the use of violence, fear, and pressure. Terrorists commit acts of violence that draw the attention of the local masses, the government, and the world to their cause. They plan their attack to get the greatest publicity, choosing targets that symbolize what they oppose. The effectiveness of the terrorist act lies on the act itself, but in the public or government's reaction to the act. Acts of terror can be categorized into six. These are the following. First, the state of terrorism. States of governments can use force or the threat of force without declaring war to terror- terrorize their citizens and achieve a political goal. Bioterrorism refers to the intentional release of toxic biological agents to harm and terrorize civilians in the name of political or other cause. It includes viruses, bacteria, and toxins that could be used in an attack such as anthrax, Bacillus anthracis, botulism, Clostridium botulinum toxin, the plague, the Yersinia pestis, smallpox, variola major, tularemia, Flagella tularensis, and hemorrhagic fever due to Ebola virus or Marburg virus. Terrorism is the use of information technology to attack civilians and draw attention to the terrorist cause. This may mean that they use computer systems or telecommunications as tools to carry out a traditional attack. More often, cyberterrorism refers to an attack on information technology itself in a way that would drastically disturb network services. For example, cyber terrorists could disable network emergency systems or hack into networks housing important financial information. Ecoterrorism, the use of violence in the interest of environmentalists. In general, environmental extremists destroy property to inflict economic damage on industries or actors they see as harming animals or the natural environment. These have included companies, logging companies, and animal research laboratories. Nuclear terrorism refers to a number of different ways nuclear materials might be used as terrorist tactic. These include attacking nuclear facilities, purchasing nuclear weapons, or building nuclear weapons or otherwise finding ways to defuse radioactive material. Narco-terrorism, the use of violence by drug traffickers to influence governments or prevent governments' efforts in stopping the drug trade. This may involve the assassination of influential persons who are against drug trafficking or killing a government official who leads an anti-drug trafficking agency. Verbal abuse is a form of cruelty that involves the use of words. These words are used to attack, control, and cause harm on other person. It includes behaviors such as angry, outbursts, screaming range, and name-calling, which tends to blame, the brainwashes, and threatens a person. This is done because the goal of the verbal abuser is to control and sway the. To better understand verbal abuse, it is better to look at the characteristics. Verbal abuse is hurtful and usually attack the nature and abilities of the person. Verbal abuse may be obvious through angry outbursts and name-calling, or hidden, involving very subtle comments. Verbal abuse is controlling. Even judgmental comments may be voiced in a very sincere and concerned. Verbal abuse is dangerous. It causes a gradual fading of the self-confidence of persons without them realizing it. They may try to change their behavior so as not to upset the abuser. Verbal abuse is fickle. A person is stunned, shocked, and thrown off balance by the abuser's mockery, angry punch, critical remark, or hurtful comment. Verbal abuse usually worsens increase of strength, regularity, and assortment. The verbal abuse may begin with the put-downs disguised as jokes. Later, other forms might surface. Sometimes the verbal abuse may rise into physical abuse, starting with accidental shoves, pushes, and bumps. Sexual abuse, incest, molestation, and rape. Incest is a sexual contact between persons who are closely related that marriage between them is considered illegal. Parents and children, uncles and aunts, nieces and nephews, and etc. Usually, incest takes the form of an older family member having sexual relations or sexually abusing a child or an adolescent. Molestation is the sexual abuse of a person, whether a child or adult, by an adult for sexual pleasure or for profit. It occurs when an individual sees another individual as a sexual object and uses this idea to satisfy his or her sexual urges and fantasies, usually by subjecting their victim to unwanted or improper sexual advances or activities. Molestation may include any of the following: fondling, to handle, stroke, or caress lovingly or erotically; mutual masturbation, two people touching each other's sexual organs for pleasure; sodomy, sexual intercourse that involves inserting of the penis of one person into the anus of another person; coitus, sexual intercourse between a male and female involving the insertion of the penis into the vagina; child pornography, explicit portrayal of children as sexual subject matter for purpose of sexual arousal. It may be in a variety of media, like books, magazines, films, photos, etc. Child prostitution refers to children who get paid to have sex. Rape is forced sexual intercourse, including vaginal, anal, or oral penetration. Penetration may be by a body part of an object. The sexual act may also be considered rape if it satisfies any of the following criteria. One of or both people are not old enough to consent, which means one of both of them are below 18 years old. One of them does not have the capacity to consent, which means one of them may not be in his right mental and legal capacity to consent. With mental disability, people who have been drugged or unconscious, etc. One of them did not agree to take part, which means the rapist might use physical force or threat to force the victim to have intercourse with him or her. If their three considerations are met, the sexual act falls under the category of rape, which is criminal offense and is punishable by law. For self-inflicted intentional injuries, the key to suicide prevention is to act fast and take the suicide attempt seriously. A simple yet effective way that is to speak to the person if you're worried that she or he will attempt suicide. It may feel awkward and uncomfortable to talk, but anyone who shows indications and warning signs needs immediate help, and the sooner you respond, the better. In this case, you may express concern for that person by saying, "I wanted to check up on you because you haven't been yourself lately." You may also ask questions like, "Did something happen that made you start feeling this way?" Or you may also offer your helping or help by saying, "I may not be able to understand exactly how you feel, but I care about you and I want to help." Observation. For cases of assault and abuse, body language, making direct eye contact, and using a strong voice are some actions that can send a message to the attacker that you're aware of how to take care of your safety and that you will not be victimized easily. Intuition. One important rule is that if you sense danger or if you sense that something is wrong or about to happen, you should immediately get away. A self-protective attitude. Most important of all, you must realize that you are worthy and have a right to be treated with respect. Being safe is your right, but it is also your responsibility. For cases of assault and abuse, in order to prevent becoming a victim of assault and abuse, one important consideration is knowing the proper self-defense techniques which involve physical, mental, and emotional assertiveness. These are the following. Self-esteem, having self-confidence that will make you less likely to be chosen as easy target. Assertiveness, having a bold and confident behavior, like speaking with conviction, may prevent a physical attack. Since may attackers what easily victims, they can overpower quickly, saying forcefully phrases like, "Leave me alone," may surprise an attacker before or he can make a move. Injuries will always expose you to harm, especially those intentionally committed by other people. Most are violent actions and behaviors that are considered crimes because of the damage to the victims, not only to their properties but mostly especially to their personal well-being. Their physical, mental and social, emotional and moral spiritual health are greatly affected, and these effects will not simply go away in time. Worst of all, this might even drive the victims to inflict harm on themselves. Adolescent, you are protected by the government through the different legislations, government agencies, and concerned groups against the dangers of intentional injuries. However, it is still your responsibility to be able to protect yourself from the violent actions and behaviors that cause intentional injuries. You should also be aware of what to do in case of experience this. You should know whom to trust if you are exposed to the dangers, intentional injuries, or the authorities to report to once you are victimized. But remember, injury prevention and safety from intentional injuries are still your priority. Further, there is a need to emphasize the importance of promoting a culture of non-violence so that you will not be a contributor to violence and abuse. Health fourth quarter module activities. Activities you need to answer in your health modules this fourth quarter. We only have different activities given to you. Make sure you finish all of this activity. That's all. Good day.